The performing arts industry has had a profound impact on many people's lives. On average, 74 million people attend live music festivals, Broadway shows, and ballet and dance performances every year. This is in addition to the millions more who perform and work behind the scenes of these shows people love to see.
My name is Cameron, and I am the founding member of the world famous Velcro Pygmies. I put the band together in 1990. Honestly, I'm a small business owner, and it just so happens that my small business happens to be rock and roll.
We opened Sidetracks roughly 4 years ago. There was a void in this town for live music. After Crossroads had closed downtown, there was nowhere else really doing what we wanted. This used to be another bar called Leanne's. They were kind of wanting to get out of the business, so we were fortunate enough to have somebody help us open it up and put on a good music venue.
I live and work in Los Angeles, and I'm a professional composer and drummer. I have been a studio musician for about 15 years. It's a long time, which means I don't play as many live concerts like I used to. I used to play big concerts in front of big audiences. Now I'm working more in studio sessions, so I get to play with different artists and different people all the time. So through the course of all of that, I had something of a Hollywood story once. I was playing a gig at the Viper Room one night in Hollywood, and a guy approached me after the show, and he said, "Hey, you've got some marching in your background, don't you?" Because I was playing traditional, and he asked about it, and it turned out he was from Fox Sports, and he was needing some music. So he asked me if I could compose some drumline kind of stuff. Well, that relationship began, and through the years, I became one of the first call composers for Fox and ESPN and Netflix and Hulu, and just tons and tons of networks.
While the music industry can make music anytime, anywhere, the dance and theater communities are reliant on studio and stage.
My name is Courtney Walker. I'm a professional ballet dancer with the Georgia Ballet. I've been there for about 6 years, and I've been a professional for over a decade. I've been a ballet dancer for over 20 years. So for the Georgia Ballet, as with most companies, we work on a contract basis. So you audition for the company at some point prior to the start of the performance season, which runs similarly to a school year. And then they offer you a contract, and every year at the end of the season, your contract is up for renewal, and they either ask you that or not.
My name is Andrew Willman, Executive Director, Broadway Theater League. There are many different factors and things that go into presenting a national touring Broadway show. First and foremost, you've got to have an understanding of who your audience is and what they would like to see. You're also working with usually a promoter or promoters that are liaison between basically your organization and New York. And then the promoters work directly with the booking agents, which most of them are out of New York City. And then the booking agents are connected to the producers themselves, which many of are in New York as well. So you take those factions, your community. We are partners with the Von Braun Center. We have to take them into account. So I sort of many times feel like I'm the sort of the center nuclei of this much bigger world, but at the same time itself, it's also very small because everybody knows everybody.
My name is David Harriet, and I'm the artistic director of Alabama Youth Ballet Theater. It's been in existence for 15 years, and that's how long I've been there.
My name is Karen Mockenstern. I am the Executive Director of Fantasy Playhouse Children's Theater and Academy. And I started with Fantasy in 2012, but Fantasy Playhouse began in 1961. It was founded as a community theater specifically for children. It was started with all of the folks that came to the Madison County area to support Dr. Von Braun at the Redstone Arsenal.
Reach and Teach was all about hosting concerts on school campuses. Students participated in every single aspect, from setting goals to analyzing the target market, planning the event space, getting sponsorships, and then participating in all of concert production. So that might mean stage management or videography or photography. And students were able to participate in all of that.
For the different segments of the performing arts industry, the backstage experience looks very different.
Backstage is not this wild party crazy thing that you think. Most of the time we're just kind of munching on whatever food's back there and just kind of waiting or warming up, and it's not nearly the crazy party atmosphere that you would expect, because musicians are, by and large, very, very serious people. Not everybody, but by and large, musicians are serious. So as you're building up to a show, it's no different than a football player or a baseball player or an attorney who's about to go into court. You've got your ritual, if you will. Like, I have something that I do. I have a pair of headphones that this is the only pair of headphones I will listen to. I put on a very specific set of music, and I use that time to play along on my practice pad, to warm up my hands and my arms and my body prior to going out and doing the show. So that's a lot of what happens backstage. It's just kind of, it's almost personal time. And the most important people on the road, by the way, are the monitor engineers and the guys who get you water and the people who pull the curtains. You have to treat them with incredible amount of respect, because they can make or break your show. If you're not nice to them, it's over.
As far as the dancers go, there are roughly 20-ish dancers in the company. There's a variety of levels within the company. So some are sort of student trainees, where there's still more student, but then they're also given the opportunity to perform for the company. And in addition to the company dancers, we often have school kids as well, so students within the Georgia Ballet School, which is the training division of the Georgia Ballet. They would do small parts as well in our production. As far as how many kids there are in a given production, it varies depending on the show. More Nutcracker, and we usually have several casts of Nutcracker, usually 2 company casts or so, 2 or 3, and then more children's casts to give everyone an opportunity to perform. So a lot of kids involved, don't know the exact number, and then a fair number of stage hands and moms of the kids to keep everything running smoothly, costume people, lights and music, and it's a fairly large group. Backstage,
well, you have a contract with every single show that you'll present, and most of them will have specs and things, and they're very familiar with your theater, and they know what your specifications are of your theater. You've got to have a stage that is, of course, large enough. There are electrical requirements backstage, dressing requirements, and then loading dock. I mean, when a national touring Broadway show comes in, it comes in a series of semi-trucks. And it's like opening your presents at Christmas, where they show up and then poof, within the course of 24 hours, you have a show that normally would take 6 to 8 weeks to produce in your community, and they're putting it together in 24 hours.
In March of 2020, when the coronavirus arrived at the shores of the United States, the curtains closed on this industry. But the resilience of the artist refused to let it die.
So COVID hit the Pygmies, not physically, but COVID had an impact on us. I think it was March 16th was our first show that got canceled. We were setting up at Live Bait in Orange Beach, and what happened was we were all set up, literally starting sound check, when the manager came in and said, cut it, tear it down, you gotta go. No show tonight. Then we spent the next 3 months trying to figure out what we're gonna do. We went through a lot of texting, trying to figure out which shows were gonna stick, which shows weren't.
So we were in rehearsal for Capalia, so full-length ballet that we were going to do in the theater. So our third big production of the year. We were a week away from going into the theater to start the in-theater portion of rehearsals, which usually go for a couple of days before the show actually begins. And they announced at the beginning of class one day that the show had been canceled. We still took class that day, and we may have taken ballet class a couple more days. But then after that, it's pretty much when things shut down, and there was a period of time where there were no classes or anything offered during the main quarantine portion of the pandemic.
So in March, we still had 4 productions that were remaining to schedule to play between March, April, and May. Escape to Margaritaville, The Choir of Man, and Rain, a tribute to the Beatles. All of those shows have been postponed for now. We do have dates for their rescheduling to be a part of the 21-22 season. We did have one show that had to be officially canceled.
Since COVID, unfortunately, my ballet studio has become my bedroom. I have a very, as most of people probably are aware, in New York City, a lot of the apartments are very small, and especially, I'm very lucky I live with other artists, so they're very understanding of the situation, because they're in Broadway shows and things, so they have to practice their singing and keep their in shape, and one of them's a yoga instructor and those kinds of things. So I found myself having to give myself a ballet class. I try to do, obviously I can't give myself my regular ballet class like before COVID or the pandemic, but I try to do as much as I can. So mostly my day now when I'm trying to stay in shape consists of doing a ballet bar in my room, holding onto my bookshelf. And I try to do some cross training because it's very important that when we get back into the studio that we're able to do the big jumps and things like that. So I've been sometimes going on walks when I'm able to, obviously with my mask and things, and trying to do cross training at the basketball court, like squats, or even when I was practicing for the Nutcracker in the lead up to before I could actually go into studio or theater rehearsals, which were very old and new regulations and requirements of rehearsals in spaces which are very hard to do, like studios or theaters. So I was at the basketball court or on the bridge or at the park doing what I could of Petit Allegro or Allegro, which for those of you who are not ballet dancers, that's the jumps.
While some people were able to do their best to continue training and preparing for going back to their new normal, others in the performing arts community had to find alternative ways to keep their business alive.
When we first went into quarantine, you can imagine that us as a Reach and Teach team, we had to really think on our feet because our entire operations was built off live events. So we started to meet and discuss different ways that we could still provide education, but in a different way. So one of the things that we did is we decided we wanted to revamp what our organization provided for students. Now, students plan, promote, and produce an entertainment broadcast, so essentially a TV show. This allows students to participate virtually, traditionally, or even in a hybrid classroom setting. We're still going to offer our concert program once we get back to normal activities and the world's a little bit normal. But until then, we are providing this new campus tour program that we developed when we truly just had to pivot. I think that's the word of 2020. When we truly had to just change what we were doing because of COVID.
I've been working from home essentially for 10 years. So for me, it wasn't a huge change in the way that I conduct my business. I get a call from, something just happened with ESPN about a month ago. They called and asked if I could do a theme song for something. Sure, we do the negotiations. My attorney handles all the contract work, and I start to work on it. The difference is that at the beginning of COVID, we all figured this was 3 or 4 weeks and we'd be done with it. So nobody made a lot of changes to the way we were doing business. Then as the summer ground on and as the pandemic has ground on, we have all gotten very tired because we can't be in the same room with each other. This room is what it is. It's big enough, but not big enough simultaneously. To have 4 or 5 people in here, social distancing is not going to happen.
When COVID hit, everything was closed down, and we went virtual for a couple of months, and then we cleaned everything really well and had students come back to class in person, made sure they were always 6 feet apart, they had their masks on, and so we could start classes. When we started classes back, then we could start rehearsals back.
We have been creative in the way that we are serving our community. In June, we launched our BTL poster shop, which we had decades of great memories of posters and things that we have accumulated over the years. And so we encouraged and welcomed our patronage back to pick up a special memory or memento from one of their favorite shows. So the BTL poster shop has been up and running since June. During the COVID process, we conducted a walk to Broadway and back. We collectively as a group walked over 9,000 miles and raised about $15,000.
Our approach was to wait it out. And I know that there's a lot of other musicians, and I can only speak for our approach. There's a lot of musicians that found alternative ways to generate revenue. And one of those things was to do the virtual shows. And a lot of guys, girls, bands started to do the virtual thing. That's one thing that the Velcro Pygmies never did. Because, again, going back to my awareness of what we are, I realized that a Velcro Pygmy performance is an experience.
State and federal health regulations differed across the nation. This presented artists with challenges and opportunities based on their geographic location.
Whenever the states started to put these restrictions on nightclubs, it definitely had a horrible effect on the music industry, a horrible effect on musicians. We were somewhat insulated in the fact that years and years ago, I realized that it was critically important to expand the footprint of the band. So as places shut down in, say, Alabama, they hadn't shut down in Texas. And so we were able to go and focus our energies there. When Texas started to lock down, we would go to Florida and we would play there. So we've tried to stay one step ahead of all of these kind of things. And that was a luxury that the Velcro Pygmies had that a lot of musicians didn't have.
And living in LA, we have a very serious outbreak. We've been locked down since March in some capacity or another. And it's killed all the live music venues. So even though I didn't play as much live, I did play some, but there is no live music going on in this city. And the number of people that I know that make their living just playing live shows in LA is staggering. So suddenly you went from 5 gigs a week to 0. And that's been monumentally challenging for those guys.
Artists reacted to COVID-19 in a variety of ways, drawing upon personal innovation and entrepreneurial spirit.
Yeah, so we knew that concerts were a massive hit with students because it's something they connect to, it's something they enjoy. Every student loves music. But when we were trying to think of what we could do still during COVID, everyone loves watching Netflix. Everyone loves watching YouTube, and that's something that we knew students could get engaged with as well. They love music, but they also love TV. They also love content that they can consume and watch. So we thought, why not have them create content that other people can consume and watch as well?
Now, for me, I've been working on different things. I've had to diversify what I'm looking to do, because when sports quit over the summer, when it didn't look like there was going to be any sports, most of my work is in the sports world. Most of the music that I do is for sports. So I did something for the Dodgers a couple of years ago, and when it didn't look like baseball season was going to happen this year, I thought, oh boy, I'm about to have a real serious problem, because that's where my bread and butter is in that sports world. And sure enough, I typically do about 3 albums worth of music, meaning 30-ish songs per year, just for Fox Sports. And then I do another 3 albums worth of music just for ESPN every year. I didn't get that call this year from either network. ESPN wanted 1 song instead of 30 songs. Fox didn't want any. So it's just a completely different ball game as far as the volume of consumption. And I don't have the amount of work, and I'm not getting the number of calls that I once did.
To keep their art alive, performers found creative ways to continue performing and reach their audience in a variety of ways.
The audience size is definitely a lot smaller. We are usually at Lee, and that has 800 seats, and we do pretty well. We sometimes have 500 or so in an audience, and here the maximum with the social distancing is 155. So that's down quite a bit, and that really decreases a lot of the ticket income.
Miss Carol, we do that every year. Well, this was supposed to be the 30th anniversary. And we didn't want to cancel it, but we knew we couldn't have 60 people on stage and 40 people backstage, and we couldn't have anybody in the audience. So because the Arts and Culture Organization and so many people that grew up at Fantasy Playhouse that were making their livings as professionals all over the world, well, many of those young professionals came back to Huntsville because New York shut down and the tour stopped. So we actually, Steven Tyler Davis, who grew up at Fantasy Playhouse, who was a professional actor and is a professional director now and is on staff at Sarah Lawrence College teaching theater, came home. He's still home. And I met with him in the fall, and our lead production, vice president of production, and we kind of tossed around the idea, and he created a brand new Christmas Carol virtual version. And so we were able to do that. It had 7 performers in it, and they all told the story, and we shot it like a film. We had another fantasy alumni who came home from Elon College and videotaped it and did it just like a film. And we broadcast that in November and December. We sold it. Actually, some of the James Clemens kids saw it for a student matinee.
In light of what's been going on, we have had to deal with whatever the restrictions are that have been put on the venues that we play. So for instance, if we go into a venue where people can't stand up, then they can't stand up. It gets real frustrating, not only for the band, but for the audience and for the club. I mean, everybody's frustrated by this. So we are at the mercy of whatever the guidelines are.
To accommodate CDC guidelines, the backstage scene looks different than it ever has before.
We've been here at the Von Braun Center Playhouse. They've worked with us very well to help us social distance. They've allowed us to use the concert hall dressing rooms so that we can spread people out. We make sure that there's a mirror in between every person, and we can only do that with the concert hall dressing rooms and the Playhouse dressing rooms. So we've been trying to do that. We've told the dancers that they need to stay in their dressing room and not go and visit other dressing rooms. So that helps keep people 6 feet apart. And then masking every time you leave the stage. Of course, they have to put their makeup on and they have to eat some. So, but other than that, they need to have their mask on. And on the sides of the stage, there's they have paper plates with their names on them, and when they go on the stage, they put their mask on the paper plate, put it on a shelf. There's shelves on the side of the stage, and then when they get off the stage, they put their mask back on.
Despite the challenges that COVID-19 has brought to the performing arts industry, artists have done whatever it takes to keep it alive.
Broadway will be back, community theater will be back, the arts all will be back.
Not knowing every day, are things going to be shut down or not? Some people talk about things being shut down, some people, don't, but then numbers start rising, and I mean, we're here, and it's amazing that we, because sometimes there were days when I thought, this isn't going to happen.